We're on the air. We're on the air. Author Interview Radio brings you the hottest authors publishing on the planet today. Listen in on these private conversations. Now, here's your host. You are on the air.
Hi, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Chetan Parkyn. He was schooled in England and traveled the world as a troubleshooting mechanical engineer and ocean diving engineer. In India in 1979, while with the enlightened mystic Osho, his abilities to read for people surfaced when his gifts were recognized by two savants who told him to get ready for a system that would come into his life and that he would introduce to the whole world. He was encouraged to use his gifts to read for people, and he commented and commenced on reading hands, cards, I Ching, astrology, and other esoteric systems to prepare himself for the new system. In 1993, he was introduced to human design, recognized right away that this was what the savants had foretold, and he has studied, read, and taught it worldwide ever since. His first book, Human Design, Discover the Person You Were Born to Be, was first published in 2009 by Harper Collins UK, and it's now available in 12 languages, and it reached bestseller status in Chinese, Russian, and Bulgarian. Two more books on human design, The Book of Lines and 21st Century View of the I Ching, and The Book of Destinies, Discover the Life You Were Born to Live, are already being translated and released in other language versions. 26 years after being introduced to human design, Chetan continues teaching human design online and in person with his wife and partner, Carola Eastwood. They reside in San Diego, California. And wow, what a fascinating background. I was like, I wanted to know more, just thinking about you and human design. So tell me more about how you came to this work.
Well, like everyone that goes through a schooling system, I followed all the steps that were prescribed for me and came out of the whole schooling system in England with a degree in mechanical engineering. Looked like the obvious thing to do, get a job, get a salary, do whatever. And the moment I qualified, I really had the sensation I needed to travel, go abroad. And so I started finding jobs all around the world, different jobs, troubleshooting, fixing things up. Very successful, got to see everything, got to try everything, and came to a point in time where my life just was not making sense. I'd had all these wonderful experiences in the world. I was actually in Africa at the time. I'd just done a 6-month safari through Africa. Amazing trip. But my life just was not making sense. And I knew I was in trouble. I was going to either self-destruct or I was going to take a more creative path. But I needed some counsel. And so I visited with these two savants in India, both working with very, very different ways of telling me about my life and about myself. And the conclusion of it was that they recognized I had the same gifts that they had in a very different sort of a way. And my path going forwards was going to be, as you announced, introduce this new system to the whole world. Well, in that these two readings happened within a week. And apparently I was a retiring mechanical engineer at that time at the age of 27 years old. And I started being introduced to these different systems to be able to tell people about themselves. And I found I had a knack for it. And as you say, 1993, this human design system came into my life. And I recognized right away this is what I was here to introduce to the world. So you said the first book's out in 12 languages. Actually, there's 2 more in the last month. French and Italian have gone out in the last month. And there's more to come. So really what I was told in 1979 has become fulfilled now. What are we, 40 years later? So it's been quite a journey. And what I found with the work that I do is every time I look into somebody's design with them, I see myself reattuning them to what they came here for, what this life is all about for them.
Wow. So human design, it would be something like how people are talking about what is my purpose? What am I here for? And I may be totally wrong about that, but it sounds like that. But what exactly does human design do for people?
It puts you on the map in your own life, basically. It's like the operator's manual. In this whole universe, there are no two grains of sand the same. There are no people living the same life. Everybody's got a unique gift, unique talents, unique things to put out into the world. However, the moment we get in here, everyone's trying to tell us, oh, you should do this. You must do this. This is a great idea. Everybody else is doing that, So we get completely diverted from our own sense of purpose. And the beautiful thing about human design is it actually gets to the point of being able to read your genetic coding. Literally, what it is that you designed your vehicle to do to carry you through this life. And evidently, one can see a sense of life purpose. We generally say, oh, well, I'm supposed to be a doctor or an artist or an author or something or other. All of that is great. But in the end of it, the only real purpose of being here is to be yourself. To be at home in your own life, in your own body, in your own journey through life, and to have a thoroughly fulfilling life. So whatever it is that you tie yourself into, and absolutely your human design can show you all your gifts and talents, where you have things to really play with and offer into the world. But the whole crux of the thing is to be so comfortable in yourself because you see you're living your own life. That's the point of it.
I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, so here all of these billions of people on earth, and yes, we're all so unique, but why is it that we're so ignorant of our human design and what we're here for? Because it seems to be one of those questions, and it's interesting to me because the fact that you were told 40 years ago, hey, you're going to help people to understand this new system. What is your insight into that? If you can, I know you probably thought about it a lot, and I'm just really curious on your take on that as you developed it and as you developed yourself. And then all of a sudden, I don't think it was all of a sudden, but then you had this knowledge. How did that all happen?
It would be fair to say, if we're looking in things like history books, that we're coming out of a place that we would call the Dark Ages. And there is evidence on the other side of the Dark Ages that there were also very bright ages, times in which people were able to build pyramids in a way that nobody can duplicate today. And there are all kinds of artifacts all over the world that show a very high intelligence lived on this planet. And so then we descended into, just like the weather changes, in a much longer time scale, we descended in what we would call the Dark Ages. And we surrendered our authority to the king or the queen or the emperor or whoever. And whatever they said, that was the deal. That was what had to happen. Women became property. Men became property. It was a whole feudal system in most parts of the world. Well, about 300 years ago, there was a shift. And the shift, we might say, was triggered by the discovery of the planet Uranus. And Uranus is what we would call the Aquarian planet. And all of a sudden, at a very high speed, we started coming out into the age we would call the scientific age, the age of communication. And we are accelerating really fast out of this Dark Ages. And so in this time, all kinds of things are being revealed to us. We might say all kinds of people are remembering all kinds of things that were forgotten several thousand years ago. And so technology is fascinating, but also people's consciousness is raising at a massive rate at the moment. So we've still got all these fossilized ideals about how the world's supposed to work, according to the Dark Ages principles. And yet we're accelerating into this very potentially bright time that has nothing to do with the age of war or fighting or destruction or anything. And, we have this potential, this massive creativity and this huge uplifting in consciousness at the moment. And so human design is really a tool for this, to get people on the page in their own life, to live their own life on purpose as themselves. They don't need to compare themselves with anybody else, and just go for it and have a very, very fulfilling life. So that is how I see it. That's how I've looked at things. We've come out of this very bright place. We've gone into a very dark place, and we are accelerating at a massive speed out of this dark ages.
So we're coming out of the dark ages, and I know for me personally, it's interesting that we're talking, because for me, for the longest time, I was, my whole thing in life was all about survival. And if someone would have said to me anything about higher consciousness, I would have not even had a concept of what that was, because I was still working on, hey, I just have to make it through the day, to take care of my family and to move forward. But in the last, say, 10 years, I can really see that I'm changing a lot, and my eyes are being opened, and I'm meeting more people like you who are educating me about these higher consciousness and the bigger possibilities for me personally and for the people around me. So when you talk about human design, how would I know what my human design is? You talk in your bio, I was reading how you studied the different things and that you read people and you did I Ching and you learned all these different modalities or tools to help you to learn how to educate people about the system. But how would I know how to start on this path for my own human design?
Well, we've made it very easy. We have a website. On that website, anyone can go on that website, put in their information, their date of birth, time of birth, and place of birth, and we will generate a free report for them. And in that report, they will get a picture of their human design, and they will get a description of one of the 4 essential keys in human design, what we call type. There are 5 of these different types. They all operate in a very, very different way. So that would be a first step. Go on the website, humandesignforusall.com, all spelled out, humandesignforusall.com. And on that homepage, you'll see there's a place to fill out to get your free report. And that would be a great place to start. There's also the book you talked about that Harper Collins published, Human Design, Discover the Person You're Born to Be. Also a great way of looking at your own chart, but also you can get free reports for your family members and people you work with and find out, immediately some of the really easy ways to interact with each other, because the revelations are massive. When you understand even one of the different 5 types, that somebody else in your family has a different type and their whole way of living is completely different from your own. So many understandings happen. I call this the first international language in a way, human design. Because when you understand some of these key points in your own human design, you can relate to anybody in the world. You just recognize, oh, they have an alternate way of doing things than I do. I don't have to subject them to always the way I do stuff. I don't have to have that expectation.
Wow, I'm thinking in my mind, especially about family members, and you're absolutely right. Sometimes you're like dumbfounded because you don't understand how someone else is thinking, and I don't think normally we go into this concept that it's by design that we're like that. So when you obviously you started this and you didn't have a computer program to begin with, So how was all of that, the software and everything developed as you developed along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's true enough, Tammy. To start with, I had to draw all the charts out by hand. And it was quite a labor. It taught me to really focus. You don't want to be making any mistakes here. You want to get it absolutely right. But fortunately, I have a very, very good friend in Germany, absolute computer whiz. And I don't know whether it was Windows 95 or whatever, but, long way back, he started putting together a program for us. And so now we have instant programs available on our website. People can download the software. We've got an app that runs on iOS and Android. It's a free human design app. You go to thehumandesignapp.com, and it's a free download, and you can draw up any chart you want on that. So we've made it really easy for people to get this information because we see the world is at a crisis point in a way. There are people that are behaving very badly. There are people behaving in a way that does not relate to this time. The children are having to go on strike to tell everybody to get a grip on things. So we have to move into this new realm of consciousness. That the old systems, we can see all kinds of things are falling apart. The financial systems, the insurance systems, the healthcare systems, they're all falling apart because they're working on old principles. And the whole thing is when people get in tune with what their life is, what really works for them on their own terms, people start living a very fulfilled life, and they start living in accordance with the energies, the nature of this particular time.
So how long will this time last? I mean, are we entering it? Are we in the middle of it? How long does this normally last?
So, in certain terms, we could say that we're coming out of an age that we would call the Piscean Age. And the Piscean Age was a faith-based age. There were dozens of different religions that were formed in that time. Generally, it was the king, the queen, the ruler. We all gave our trust to them. They knew what they were doing. They were to be responsible. And that probably started coming undone about 300 years ago. So we're in the threshold. I often have this image of having our foot stuck in the door, prizing the door open into the new age, coming out of this age where we trust presidents and kings and all these people, and moving into the age of personal responsibility that we would call the Aquarian Age. So in order to be responsible in one's own life, you have to know who you are and what your life's all about. And that is the major feature about human design, because it puts you on the page in your own life, on your own terms, in present tense. And here's the wonder of the whole thing. If you're living in present tense and you're clear in yourself, you're equipped to deal with anything that comes your way. You're just in that moment, and you're so clear in yourself that absolutely nothing phases you. You just step into the next adventure. You step into the confrontation. You move out of the whole pattern of reacting. Oh, life dealt me a bad hand. Life gave me a difficult thing. It's all everybody else's fault. I'm a real victim. You move out of that whole concept and you move into your own life and you start living a really, really fulfilled life. So
that's really interesting, because I had an experience this summer when I went on a trip to Alaska, and I work behind a computer all day long. And when I was in Alaska, I literally was chasing bumblebees and watching them and just immersed in the moment. And it was the first time when I really understood what it meant to just be in the now, because I wasn't worried about anything, in the outside world. I was just in that moment, enjoying, that moment in time as I was, chasing these bumblebees around as they were lighting on the flowers. So you have the humandesignforusall.com, where you can actually go get your free human design report. So when somebody, they get this report, how do you work with them so that they can really, step into this new way of being?
Well, what we do, Tammy, I should just really compliment you on that experience of living in the present tense. because, that is our natural state for all time. There is only the present. The past is what we kind of remember, good, bad, or indifferent. The future is what we project out of what happened before. The present is the only real moment in time. So how do we encourage people to work with us and go further and go deeper into understanding who they are and what their life's all about? So when somebody gets a free report, we ask them very nicely, are they open to receiving emails from us? And so we will then guide people to be more and more involved in what we're doing, to find out more and more about themselves. So we do trainings. We train people in the system. I've been doing that for over 20 years now. And I travel all over the world doing classes. We do an online class that's available for everybody. I do private readings for people. I do mentoring for people that really want to be done with all the old habits and stuff. And, they recognize I'm not living a life true to my purpose. So I do a 6-month mentoring with people just to get them absolutely clear in who they are, drop the old habits, drop the reactions, and get really clear about who they are and how their life works for them. And people always say there's a before and there's an after. Afterwards, they experience an enormous level of freedom in their life. So there's many different ways in which people can be encouraged to go further in this. But I think we all have to realize at the moment, Tammy, the rules of life are changing. What we've been told to believe and trust in, it's very questionable in these times. We're living in this age we would call fake news. I mean, where did that come from? So again, it's an empowerment to come into your own life and to recognize what is truthful for you. What works for you. That's the point. We're all having this very extraordinary experience here in life. Nobody really knows what life is. We're just having this extraordinary experience. And my encouragement is for everybody to live it to the max. Just go for it. And human design gives you all the keys to be able to do that.
Wow. I'm just listening to you, and it's so interesting to me. When I do these interviews, I never know who's going to choose what day or time. They just sign themselves up, and then I show up, and then the person shows up. But what amazes me is how lately I've noticed that the people show up on the days when I need to hear their message the most. And it appears that today's the day that I needed to learn about human design as I'm, becoming whoever it is that I'm supposed to be. So I really appreciate that, because I think that some days we're not always 100% ready for the message when somebody shows up giving us, some really important information. So I think people listening to this conversation are people who are ready for what you're bringing to the table, so to speak, about human design, because it really is interesting. And the fact that you said it's now available in 14 different languages, how do you, since you are dealing with people globally, do most of your clients, do they speak English, or do you have people who do come in because of all the different language translations?
Well, the books, of course, are all in the language of the country. And most of the translators are friends of mine who have, or we've become friends during the process, because there's a lot of interaction, what's really going on here and how do we express it in the best possible way. But when I do trainings abroad, like I do trainings in China now, and of course I always have to have a translator for that because I have no clue about how to speak Chinese. They say, don't even try, you'll say it wrong, So I'm also doing trainings in Italy this next year, and I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, we'll have translators in Italian and in German and other languages, because, Italy has the pull for many people to come to this kind of a training. And we'll have people from all over. But generally speaking, yes, my teaching goes in English. The online trainings that I offer, we have people from all over the world. From people from Hong Kong, we have people from Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe that join our classes. And yes, they do understand English well enough to be able to engage well with it.
Well, it's always fascinating to me how certain concepts spread, globally, and it's like your message is, just like the savants said to you. They said you're going to introduce the system to the whole world, and here you are, with global information, and people are coming from around the globe to learn. I just think that's so fascinating. And I'm happy to be part of it in this small way by, having you as a guest on the podcast. So I just want to remind everyone that you have the free Human Design Report, and that's at humandesignforusall.com. You have the Human Design app that they can get, and that's available, you said, in both Android and iOS, or that's Apple, basically.
It is Apple, yes. Yes.
And then, of course, you do the personal readings and mentoring. And I'll make sure that you have your website, humandesignforusall.com, in the show notes. So before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like to add that maybe I didn't ask that I should have?
No, it's been wonderful talking with you, Tammy. I mean, my great thing is to encourage people, get with it. This is something that will absolutely revolutionize your life in a good way. Every time I work with somebody with human design, the first thing I realize them doing is they start relaxing. They start recognizing, wow, I always knew this about myself, but I never had the encouragement to live this way. And now I see I have to live this way. And for parents with children, get your children's charts, get their free reports, find out what's going on for them. We're living in a time where there are some very different people coming into this world at the moment, and they don't vibrate on the same way that the past generations have. They're helping raise the consciousness of this planet, so they need all the encouragement they can possibly get. And if children and parents both know their designs, wow, you get a very, very amazing family dynamic. So that's my great encouragement.
Well, I'm certainly going to go get my free Human Design Report. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about my grandchildren and even my children. But my grandchildren definitely are on a different vibrational level than different people. That they just seem to be a lot more sensitive to things, and so I always feel like as a grandparent, I need to help them, to make it, to, understand the world and everything. So that's
grandparents always make the greatest friends for their grandchildren. Absolutely. The one ally they can rely on.
Yeah. Well, that's true, because the beauty of being a grandparent, of course, is that the kids do eventually go home, most of the time. But I just love to just to talk to my grandchildren and to hang out with them, because a lot of times they seem to, all they really want is just that presence.
Yes.
Sometimes it isn't about anything other than just being in that moment with them. And I think that's one of the things that I'm learning a lot about is just being in that now moment. And I think that you're absolutely right. That is a true gift when you're able to just be in the now and not be thinking about what happened before or what's going to happen, but just being in the now. So
it's kind of funny, Tammy, you're following bees to be.
Well, you're absolutely right. And seriously, I'm not kidding. The bumblebee, that one of the bees I was following, it would get into the flower and it would roll around in the pollen in the flower. And I mean, I was just like, wow, that bee is really just enjoying everything. And I was right there with it, just appreciating it. And like, here's another good example. I have a little kitten. So the little kitten, I'll lift it up and I'll put it up to right here on my shoulder. And the first time it purred, I just was in heaven. When the little kitten, it purred, and I was just like giddy because that moment when the little kitten purred for the very first time, because I held it close to me. Yeah. And that was such a beautiful moment that, I'm talking about it because it was such a beautiful moment of being in the now. Yes. And again, appreciating that. So that's why I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and you're confirming things. And I think that's part of what we need right now, is a confirmation that some of these feelings that we're having are accurate about the shift and the change, about the way the world is. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome, Tammy. Thank you.
So everyone, remember, it is free Human Design Report, and all you do is you go to humandesignforusall.com, get it, and you can use it. And then, of course, if you need any additional help, I'll put the email address in at contact@humandesignforusall.com, and you can reach out and find out more. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Great pleasure, Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, this is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
You've been on the air, listening to Author Interview Radio. To get instant access to all the private author conversations, go to authorinterviewradio.com. Subscribe now.